So our speaker professor says Jacobowitz studied English literature at Columbia University as an undergraduate student and went on to Cornell University to conduct his MA and PhD work in East Asian Studies. He has taught at San Francisco State University and Yale University and is currently directing the Kyoto Consortium for Japanese Studies. He specializes in modern Japanese literature and media history from the Meiji period to the present, as well as Japanese popular and mass culture. His publications include the book Writing Technology in Meiji Japan, a media history of modern Japanese literature and visual culture, published by Harvard University Asia Center in 2016. And the book won the 2017 International Convention of Asia Scholars Book Prize in the Humanities. The title of his talk today is Japan Won the War, Conspiracy Theory and Revanchism in Modern Political Culture. Let's welcome Professor Jacobowitz.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Chen, for that warm introduction. Thank you to Bomi, and thank you also to Professor Rhee, and to all of you. It's really an honor to be here with you. It is noteworthy that the emperor never uttered the words surrender or defeat, but continued to justify Japan and its allies' efforts to liberate East Asia from Western domination. He commended the nation for its fortitude to, quote, endure the unendurable and suffer that which is insufferable, end quote, and alluded to the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki through the use of a quote unquote new and most cruel bomb. The obscure wording of the broadcast that elided direct reference to surrender not only reflected rhetorical maneuvers necessary to save face for those who had promoted and or fervently believed in a Japanese imperial victory in its holy war against the West, but a new game afoot to reshape the narrative of war, defeat, and reconstruction as Japan awaited imminent American occupation. And I begin with the Jewel Voice broadcast to foreground the elisions and machinations that were ingrained in it as a text, medium, and mass cultural event from its very inception. This presentation accordingly seeks to explore how falsified and fantasized myths of Japanese imperial victory, as well as some of their outgrowths in the post-war to contemporary era, have reshaped the global landscape of literature, film, and popular culture. From August 1945 to January 1947, the group used terrorism, propaganda campaigns, and conspiracy theories within the Japanese immigrant community to violently insist that Japan won the war. For more than a year after the outcome of the war was clearly decided, Shindo Renmei knowingly engaged in a thought war against Allied victory. A viral mix of conspiracy theory and allo-historical fiction was mobilized and disseminated over pirate radio and in contraband pamphlets and magazines, claiming, for instance, that General Douglas MacArthur committed suicide, that the Japanese emperor appointed Nazi sympathizer Charles Lindbergh acting president of the United States, and now I'm quoting from the text itself, all Japanese outside of Japan should return to the homeland to make ready for the colonization of the islands conquered in the Pacific. But let me now shift focus to another example of contemporary Japanese allo-historical fiction that imagines what would happen to the United States if Japan had won the war. Cult manga artist Maruo Suehiro's Nihonjin no Wakusei from 1985, which the artist himself renders into English as Planet of the Jap, is a short graphic novel, some 28 pages in length, long out of print, but scanned and translated online. And as we may also experience in both Philip K. Dick's novel and the television series adaptation of Man in the High Castle, the remaking of our present reality, as for example, under the nightmarish conditions that these works present, is at once terrifying and in a strange way liberating. When done properly, it is capable of reaching the kind of highest form of intellectual and aesthetic exploration of world historical paths not taken. But at the same time, it is exactly this potentiality once unlocked that can be impossible to put back into the Pandora's box. So we really have to exercise caution. Still, healthy academic discourse depends on robust debate and willingness to evaluate prevailing norms. But healthy academic discourse also means turning a self-critical eye onto our own pieties, not taking for granted that our own historical narratives are sacrosanct or that only one ideological position has a monopoly on truth.
And secondly, I don't know if you heard of this recently, but there was a public release of a paper that was written at the Pentagon, commissioned by the Pentagon, about how to deal with China. And one of the suggestions it makes is that the Chinese are racist and eugenicists. And the way that the United States should carry on a kind of a propaganda war against China is to basically compare it to Nazi Germany. Right now, aren't these very dangerous things to do? Right, that in some sense, what Nazism has become associated with all the things that that of course we regard as evil, and in a way, because of that, we seem to be under, the United States anyway, seems to be under this sort of compulsion to kind of use it over and over again, not realizing that doing so actually will reduce the taboo, right, that we associate with extreme right-wing politics.
We find ourselves in this very uncomfortable space, as Professor Pak has rightly pointed out, where Hitler somehow, and Professor Chen made this point too, I mean, Hitler becomes sort of the bellwether or the measuring stick for all kinds of behavior that we don't agree with, whether big or small. I can't tell you how many times I've seen one political party or another call the other side Hitler. So Obama was made into Hitler, which was really bizarre, and Donald Trump was made into Hitler, right? I mean, we've seen it go from both sides. So it's not productive. It's not helped. Strangely enough, the Japanese Empire, and of course the atrocities that it committed, and the Greater East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere as a kind of bogus invocation of the liberation of Asia from the West, has really fallen by the wayside in American and I think to maybe some degree world historical discourse. The Nazis take up a lot of oxygen, and I've been guilty of that a little bit too. I was supposed to talk about imperial victory narratives, and I brought the Nazis in. We do have to find a way of kind of putting the pin in that balloon and taking some of the air out. So I think that is a very good observation on Professor Pak's part.